Okay. So I just found out a shocking... Don't act shocked. I found a shocking revelation. You don't watch my Instagram stories.
I don't watch anyone's Instagram stories anymore.
Wow.
I don't post on Instagram stories anymore.
Wow. Why?
I can't. I shan't be bothered.
Shan't?
I shan't be bothered. I have no time. I have no energy. As boss and CEO of my life, I just can't.
That's what I was saying. What are you doing that's more important than what?
I'm working.
What do you watch in between working?
I don't. I
TikTok.
I scroll Twitter so I can know what's going on in the world, so we can talk about things.
Oh, you're on X,
and I can be informed.
You're on X,
so I can be informed for this podcast.
Oh, look at where that's got you. No, I was saying that we were at the. It's by this journalism cooperative called the Free Press.
Don't you have to use the air quotes when you say journalism now?
In a lot of contexts, yeah. It's led up by Barry Weiss, who used
Barry White?
Yes, it's led up by Barry White.
Did he sing a few numbers? I don't even know what Barry White sings.
That's what he's saying. That's what it sounds like. You know, he has Barry White has 10 songs that all sound the same. It's fantastic. He's a great discographer.
Anyway, what was this? What was this bullshit you went to on Wednesday?
It was at the Ace Hotel in downtown, at the theater there. So downtown, first of all, hosted by Barry Weiss. Tim Dillon, the comedian, opened. And on one side, it was the debate called, the topic was resolved. Has the sexual revolution failed? Resolved was it has. The opposition was it hasn't. On the affirmative side, it has failed. You had some British woman and Anna Khachiyan.
Katie Hopkins?
Anna Khachiyan of...
Bless you.
Red Scare. Anna and Dasha. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know vaguely who you're talking about.
Exactly who I'm talking about.
I've never actually heard them. I've never actually seen them.
But you heard them for 2 seconds. I hate their voice.
I think they're a figment of your imagination, and so I just
they're real. No, they were real, and they were there.
Like they are your, Sybil. Your multiple personalities.
The whole time, and then on the negative, you had some Pakistani girl and Grimes.
Okay.
So it was a fascinating group of people there. And, of course, Anna stole the show. She was fantastic. Grimes was also very endearing because she was like, she has a speech impediment. So I just want to say, I don't read notes. I have a learning disability. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to, go on and be like, why is this a topic that we're not talking about in the future? And it was like, yes, I'm so in. It was a lot of fun. But anyway... That was on Wednesday. And you didn't know that because I posted it on my story and you don't watch Instagram stories anymore. But wait, hold on a second. Let's back this whore up. I also posted
I'm not backing up.
I also posted it on Twitter.
Yeah, I think that's where I might have
seen
something.
That was your response to me tweeting something.
Well, no. Okay. To be fair...
You were drunk.
No, quite the opposite. I wish I had been. The X algorithm or something, they keep changing it. They keep fucking with it.
True.
So I went from seeing Brad Palumbo none, and I think Brad Palumbo and Nancy Pelosi never came across my feed. Ever.
The two worst Italians to come out of this country.
None of
the worst two Italians since Sacco and Vanzetti.
Neither of them ever came across my feed. Then all of a sudden, I think I DM'd you one tweet from
Brad Pelosi.
No, from Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
And then I quote tweeted one thing from Brad Palumbo because I saw it on someone else's quote tweet. And now all of a sudden my feed is filled with Nancy Pelosi and Brad Palumbo tweets. I want to see that shit.
No, it's true because today I saw that one of our followers, Mark...
And Janine Pirro. I see her shit all the time now. Because I sent you one thing.
It's the axis of evil because she... Okay, we'll get to that in just a second. But earlier today, one of our followers, Mark, who lives in Houston, Texas guy, responded to a what's his name with the forehead? Dave Rubin tweet.
Yes.
And so I clicked through the Dave Rubin thing and I responded to it because Dave Rubin has this weird obsession with Trump and is one of the quote DeSantis quote influencers and double quotes. And I guess Trump was asked something like, Trump was asked by Megyn Kelly, like, is a woman who transitions a man or something like that, or is a man who transitions a woman? And Trump just said, and then formulated an answer like, why did you say, And I'm like, this is like, so I put a picture of Randall from Recess, like, writing a note, because I'm like, this is how these people operate. Dave Rubin, who, it's that picture of, like, the thing of, like, not now, mommy, honey's posting, like, not now, honey, mommy's posting on the internet, like, the kid's sitting there on fire.
Right.
Like, his child is sitting there, has no formula or diapers while he's posting on the internet, except when DeSantis posts some, like, nasty ad basically saying that, like, you know, like gays shouldn't have rights at all, and then Dave Rubin goes quiet for 5 days. Like, he is the worst of the worst when it comes to that kind of stuff.
And the other one that I won't name, I won't give her airtime on this podcast.
The
Don't name
Jigsaw. So
sure.
So you've got those two, and but anyway, getting back to the Twitter algorithm, then I saw about 8 tweets of his within a 15-minute basis. So I think Twitter's like, oh, you open someone's profile? Let me show you everything they've ever posted. And I'm like, I don't want to see that. Because 2 or 3 weeks ago, the algorithm was, if someone in your feed has liked something, then it goes into your feed. So yours and my person that we know would like things, the Wisconsin one, would like things, and then it would just end up in my feed. And so I saw all these ugly fucking twinks. And I was like, wow, who follows all these people? And now we know. But anyway, Twitter needs to fix their algorithm. Or X or whatever the fuck. You know, Linda Vaccarino. Is that the one who's the CEO now? Another Italian. What is it with you people? What? You know what? I think it's time. Get them out. But anyway,
Dago's built this country.
Poorly. They built this country poorly. They were lazy. The bricks were not placed appropriately.
We were drunk. What do you want from us?
Are. Sacco and Vanzetti. No.
We had too much wine.
Jeanine Pirro has a new show. She's the new Robin Leach of the Lifestyles of the Bitch and Famous.
Oh my god. I sent you that. There's some...
Fox News travel show hosted by Jeanine Pirro, where she basically shows up to hotels, drinks, and goes on yachts. She has my dream job.
There was some trailer that that she posted on her Twitter account, and I just went... I saw it, and I was like, what? I don't even know how it ended up in my feed. I guess someone else I know retweeted or something. But I sent it to you immediately. I was like, who? Who greenlit this? Who needs to be fired?
Have you seen...
She's going to go to a hotel. They're going to, like, underserve her, and she's going to bomb them. Bomb them immediately.
My resolution, airstrikes. Bomb them, keep bombing them, bomb them again. There's going to be some poor hotel in Cape Cod that's going to be drone strikes, and it's going to be Jeanine Pirro's fault. But, okay. There is a Fox Nation app where you can see segments of the Fox News shows the night before, but it also has original content. And so that was the one I sent you where Nancy Grace has a show.
Right.
Martin Luther King Jr.'s niece, Alveda King, has a cooking show.
Right.
And now Jeanine Pirro has a travel show. And it really is the who's who of the who's left. I mean, I don't know what's next. Like, you get to see what... It's like I would joke about a Laura Ingraham home renovation show. Like, she puts a hose in the mail slot or something like that. But she actually did that to an ex. But I would joke about that. But that's probably going to happen. Like, it's really sad.
Yeah. Laura Ingraham shows up at your house in, a very blue district. So I hear you want to move. Let me help you, pack up or tear this shit down.
She has a Laura Ingraham slipper flop.
We're going to move you to Florida.
Could you imagine? Like, that's where we're at now. That's how sick this country is. Because HGTV and Food Network have gone woke. So now there's alternatives to these shows on Fox that boomers, our parents' ages, only watch because they don't know how to change the channel.
They still think they have to get up and go flip a
Is Chopped coming on next?
They can't find the knob on the actual box.
The Philco's not working. That's where we're at. That's really where we're at. That's sad.
Well.
Speaking of sad.
No, I have a good story.
Oh, okay. You had a story that you wanted to discuss on the pod.
So, this requires a little bit of a backstory, so please bear with me. I apologize in advance.
Oh, God.
So, back pre-pandemic, 2018, 2019.
Pre-what?
Panini.
Yes.
When I was living in Albuquerque, I had a friend who was going through some issues with family. Mm-hmm. Basically, was getting a lesbian woman getting a divorce from her wife.
Oh, that one, yeah.
Yes. And because her wife physically birthed the children, claimed that my friend did not have any kind of parental rights, and
that's interesting.
Did not have any type of custody. You know, had no recourse for custody. However, did keep cashing the child support checks. Interesting.
Ooh, so she was one of the first birthing persons.
Right. So she fought this in court. I had to help because I was one of the few people who had some free time in the evenings because I didn't have a family that I could come and see the few visitations she was allowed at the time.
Right.
And I got wrapped up in all of this. I had to, testify in court. They maligned my name. Basically was suggesting that I was inappropriately ogling the children during bath time. Like it was disgusting.
Right. Really fucked up.
And said all of this in court, like on the record.
Yeah.
And so, like, these were just horrible people. And there's lots and lots of intricacies to this story, which led to the judges making decisions against my friend because the other party was ingratiated in the court system, knew a bunch of people, it was nepotism and all that stuff. So, pandemic hits, everything shuts down, everything slows down.
Zoom court.
By this point, by 2022, my friend had not seen her children in 3 years.
Oh my God.
And was still fighting this fight. September 11th of this year, so a few days ago, it was heard at the New Mexico Supreme Court.
Really?
The New Mexico Supreme Court.
Supreme.
The state Supreme Court heard the case for this custody battle.
Now, mind you,
trying to decide.
But that's a family court case. So the fact that it entered the Supreme Court means it had to enter what some kind of civil criminal litigation.
Well, it went through several. She went through several levels.
That's serious
of things, but it's serious, especially because it now sets precedent theoretically for other states as well, but especially for the state of New Mexico because
they'll cite that case law.
Right, they've never had a case where, someone actually gives birth and the other person has documentation saying we went into this together.
Right.
So she knew what she was getting into with me when we had these children together. So I have some rights.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so it went all the way up to the New Mexico Supreme Court. The case was heard September 11th. So Monday.
Yeah.
Monday. 2 days later, they had already made a decision.
Oh.
And my friend won.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So they decided that she does have recourse to have parental rights and custody. It's now going back to like a district court to be reheard and all that stuff. But very, very, I want to stress that very, very, very rarely does a case ever is a case ever heard in any Supreme Court that is decided that quickly. These things take months.
Right. Many deliberations.
She texted me and said, I was expecting not to hear anything for 4 months.
Wow.
My lawyers told me not to expect
anything. And she got a response in 48 hours.
She got a response in less than 2 days.
That's incredible. Well, good for her.
So, huge precedent now set really for the entire country. And, it's a big deal. And what irritated me about the whole thing was this other woman, the other party, she's a lesbian. Did she not realize that if she had won, this whole thing, she would have set back any type of, gay rights in the state of New Mexico at least, decades?
Right.
You are literally saying that because you didn't actually have a process in the birth, you have no parental rights. That's the precedent she wants.
And then goes scorched earth against her completely through the court system.
Right.
And uses every motion and legal thing. There's this
every lie, by the way.
Of course. There's this documentary that, of all people, Dr. Drew Pinsky was involved in, called Divorce Incorporated. And it basically blows open the doors to the family court system and talks about how, usually from the perspective of some men and women too, get barred from custody or seeing their children or whatever because you have divorce attorneys that become judges in the family law system, which runs separately from civil, criminal, all that stuff.
Right.
The family law system is like a whole parallel reality. You still work in courtrooms, you still have judges and attorneys and everything, and defendants, but basically attorneys become judges become attorneys. So there's this talk about nepotism within the thing. And also, depending on the attorney that you hire, they'll be like, oh, you and your husband are separating after 8 years. Okay. Oh, what your assets, everything that's already sorted? All right. Okay. Well, we can get you more. Did he ever touch the children? And stuff like that, where they'll manufacture allegations. They will basically do everything they can to separate fathers from their children. And then, on top of that, make the fathers pay for their children's care until the child is 18, bankrupting them in the process. So it's a very upsetting parallel economy that runs because it runs on a divorce attorneys at the end of the day making all the money from both the mothers and the fathers of these children. And to give you an example in the news as well, so Britney Spears' two children with Kevin Federline, former backup dancer, and Clovis West High Clovis West High dropout. Go Eagles. One of them turned 18 today. One of the children, which means, importantly, Britney Spears no longer has to pay, I think it was something like $50,000 a month for child support for this one child. That's basically her ex-husband's income. So she doesn't have to pay this anymore. And that was a huge part of her royalty, her residuals, her performance money from Vegas, all that stuff was going towards something like that. And it was a very rare instance where the mother was actually having to pay to the father, but a very bleak economic outlook for somebody, and also not being able to see their child.
Right. It's I got a backstage, I guess, view of all of this, and it
nasty.
Well, it's not just nasty because it can be nasty just from the things that people make up with no, just allegations with no evidence.
And you can get experts and psychologists and stuff to be like, yeah, that happened. You're like, you weren't there. You just got paid. That's insane.
But when you add to that the fact that the mother of the other woman works in the court system and knows all of these people who are hearing the case and all.
Ooh, that's really fucked up.
The lawyers kept making motions for this person should be recused, and it would always be struck down somehow. It was all messed up. But I do want to just sort of selfishly make the point from the reason I got so heavily involved in it. I was doing my friend a favor,
right?
Because she's a good mother. I knew what I was doing was in the right, and she was in the right. She is in the right. But when they fucked with me,
it's like
it was over.
Yeah.
Because let's put it this way: if I'm required to go to visitations, and during those visitations, you ask that the other party, my friend, give the children a bath. And me as the person, watching the visitation and then going to court to say, yes, everything was on the up and up. She didn't beat the kid.
Right.
I have to watch everything, right? I have to be there the entire time and make sure that she is, because I'm saying under oath, I never saw her harm a child.
Anything, untoward.
Right.
And so that means I have to your character.
That means I had to be in the room when she was bathing children. It was not the most comfortable thing for me. I understand, but
no, they're not your children, for God's sake.
But for her to say in court that she felt odd that I was in the bathroom while they were giving baths because she thought that I was looking a little bit too eager. Like, those words that come out of your mouth on the record in a courtroom making me sound like a pedophile.
That's sick.
I was like, you know what? I said words at your wedding. I went off.
I take all that back.
You didn't know me back then, but it was one of the few times that I actually had to literally bite my tongue and not get up in a courtroom and be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Because you are saying that a gay man is ogling children.
Right.
You are literally pushing a stereotype. I get heated just thinking about it.
You did a mitzvah for your friend, and now it sounds like she's finally, which a lot of people don't get legal recourse. That's the hard part. People are like, oh, just appeal. That costs money. But it sounds like she's finally getting the recourse that's due to her in this situation.
Right, and she was lucky enough to get lawyers who knew that she was going to win to do it basically pro bono.
Pro bono. I always question people, I think it's interesting when it comes to a lot of the legal issues in this country. I feel that many Americans don't have to interact with the justice system, and that's fine. I feel that in a lot of situations, people don't understand that the justice system functions not necessarily where justice is blind.
Right.
And I think we're watching it now with some of the Trump indictments and things like that. I think that people, up until very recently, would assume if a DA indicts you, you're guilty. Like, why would they indict you if you're not? What were you doing that made them think that you're guilty? If you get arrested on suspicion of something, you did it. Of course, that's how our system works. And now that we're realizing that the system does not function like that you could be at the whims of a DA or an agent of a 3-letter agency or the Justice Department or a local, county sheriff or whatever. They determine for better or for worse that you did something that you didn't. That's very odd.
I think the good thing, though, is because I still have, despite what I witnessed in the family court system, I still have some faith that while the justice system in this country is very slow, 90% of the time, I'll go with that number, 90% of the time, it still works. It still works where it comes out the right way. It just, sometimes it takes a lot longer than it should.
It is a very strange form of recourse, though, because I think that in a very immediate world, it moves very slowly, for better or for worse. There are things that should move slowly, where you do get a chance to evaluate the facts and other things come to light. But in other situations, I think that people should also understand, Vindication moves very slowly. And you're not going to change the stain of someone being accused of something, whether it's true or not. They were still accused. So whether it was with the Me Too thing or anything like that, the Duke Lacrosse case, the Covington school kids case, okay, they won a case at the end of the day. That's still 3 years of their lives because they just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's weird and odd.
Well, and I'm getting a little nervous. We've talked about this before. I'm getting a little nervous about the justice system in this country because it's starting to be weaponized. We're starting to hear too many times on news reports that an Obama-appointed judge, a Trump-appointed judge,
yes,
they throw that in there as if...
So you pick your judge, and then you pick your venue, and you pick your result.
Right, but they throw that in there as if that's supposed to make one side like them or hate them.
Right.
Which it does. Like, that's why they put that in there. But we've seen how many times, and again, it doesn't matter who appoints the judge. We've seen many Obama-appointed judges, or even Clinton-appointed judges, who make the right decision on our side, like something that we would agree with. We've seen many Trump-appointed judges who make a decision that we don't agree with.
Maybe stopped every one of his legal challenges.
Right. Maybe it's on the side of what's right legally. You know, if you follow the letter of the law, most of these judges who have been appointed, not the ones that are elected, that's different, but the ones who have been appointed, they tend to follow. They tend to do the right thing when it comes down to interpreting statutes.
Well, and I want to be very fair. I think that people think that a president who appoints a judge to a position knows this judge intimately. No.
Correct.
They were handed a file by a senator or a member of Congress or another bureaucrat or something.
And someone else has vetted them. They don't know.
Someone vetted them and they're like, okay, that's fine.
I trust you.
Exactly. I trust your thing. I don't even know if they've met them. In a lot of situations they haven't. I know people have been appointed to district courts and they met their local senator once. Like, we had coffee for 10 minutes, like, in a group of people. Like, it was not like, oh, this is a dear friend of mine or something. Right. So they don't vet them on a very personal level. So that shouldn't leave much of a window into the person's ideology. I mean, it even happens at the Supreme Court level. Like, God, Bush appointed Sandra Day O'Connor, who upheld abortion. How many times have you had justices from one party then uphold decisions for the other party's side?
Because we've talked about several times in the past year, this past session of the Supreme Court, how many times did Kavanaugh or Amy Coney Barrett make decisions that we were like,
God damn it,
we don't agree with what you just said.
Gorsuch really didn't.
How many times did, I think Ketanji Brown Jackson at least 3 times shocked me going, oh, she made the right call this time.
Yes, and some of those 7-9-0 decisions, it was like, wow.
So these people, they get pulled, they get pushed through the ringer, but when it comes down to it, most of them do have the integrity to serve in the position that they serve in, which is why I think when it comes down to it, public opinion of the justice system is the highest of all branches of government, as it should be. But dropping because of the media.
Right.
I think it's been a recent invention that the media is now putting Trump-appointed judge, Obama-appointed judge. I never saw that before.
Oh, no, that was never the case before.
Now it's being politicized, and this is not good. Because if the people of this country make everything partisan, including the justice system, we're fucked.
I want to say something very clear. Justice is not blind. It is built.
Unlike you.
Well, it's built in the sense of you have to build judges that are going to be impartial. You have to build attorneys to decide your case. You have to build a case. You have to sort of build a whole system and build whatever direction you want to go in. And then you get something that approximates justice in a larger sense. But it's not blind in the way that people think. Now, I think that when you build justice, you should build it to be relatively impartial to both sides, and it should be within the letter of the law and the Constitution and people's oaths, that they have to agree to, but I don't know.
There was something that I wanted to bring up months ago on our show here, but I didn't because I didn't want to get into the weeds and we were already going long, but it fits here in this discussion, so I'll bring it up now. The name is escaping me. I'm sorry. Who is the most senior justice on the Supreme Court that is a conservative one? Is it
Thomas?
No, the other one.
Alito's not the most senior. Alito was George W. Bush. Thomas is George H.W. Bush.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then, but sorry.
You're thinking of Scalia, probably, who passed.
Right. But no, it was Alito who gave a recent.
Alito is 70 now.
He gave a recent interview to some newspaper that was, at the time, reviled by some on the left.
I think he did a Wall Street Journal interview.
I think that's the one I'm referring to. But he made mention, and they broke it down on the podcast I listened to. He made mention of the fact that there is a new and emerging school of thought when it comes to Supreme Court decisions that I think he used the word like kind of worries him.
Mm-hmm.
So I've talked before about the idea of originalism, originalism meaning the more conservative view of statutes.
Yeah.
How was it written? How did the people who wrote it? How did they mean for this statute? Right, for the statute to be interpreted.
And then, basically constructivism.
And then you have the living Constitution, right? The people who think
the living Constitution.
We should interpret the laws and Constitution as time changes. Those are the more progressive people. There's emerging apparently a new thing in between that called consequentialism.
What the fuck is that?
Where basically I think Alito was alluding to.
Don't do that.
He was alluding to the fact that some justices, he's noticing in their opinions as they pin them, they're writing about if we make this decision, what consequences will it have in the future? So we're not worried about does it fit within the statute that we are interpreting and upholding, but screw that, which is what they're supposed to be focusing on, and let me think of if I sign on to this opinion, 20 years from now, where is that leading? What's the consequences?
Problem, this is why that's retarded. That used to be built into opinions, which was why opinions were done the way that they were done. That was not where you start, that was not where you ended. That was where you started.
But see, I don't like that at all, though.
I think it's messy at all, but I can understand where this is the problem now. Because now we're functioning off of a system of precedent v. precedent. So precedent is set based off a decision that's cited, with Korematsu or things that people might not necessarily agree with, like if that was a Japanese internment decision, or things like that. But then, in other situations, a different precedent might be set, and we want to counteract that somehow. Like we don't want to have a Plessy v. Ferguson. We don't want to have that kind of thing that we have to then later counteract. So we have to think about if we say this, then the legislature and everything like that. By the way, if justices saw this Hobbs abortion decision, Dobbs abortion decision, why would they have ruled the way that they did? They wouldn't have, because consequentialism states that 20 states of the 50 are going to pass abortion until the kids in kindergarten. 30 states are going to ban abortion until 15 weeks. So then what do? You can't rule it out based off that. You're scared of what the potential results could be.
But to be fair, that's exactly what it honestly should have happened. That's what basically the Constitution says.
Right.
So I feel that the original Roe v. Wade decision was made with consequentialism in mind of we're not actually adhering to the Constitution or the statutes that have been written thus far. We're going to say these people want this, and so we're going to rule this way and give them what they want theoretically. And that served as precedent for other decisions, along the line. But it was bad decisions. It was a bad precedent.
The problem too is that they created this brand new constitutional right to privacy, which is like, well, it's between a woman and her doctor. That was literally pulled out of someone's ass. I wish you could have been at this debate too, because this decision was talked about. It's like after the Dobbs decision. Dobby is a free elf. But no, after the Dobbs decision, but then they did a whole intro video. You can watch this online, where they talked about the sexual revolution. And so they started with a 50s housewife clip, like at home making dinner for her husband. Then there's a clip of Gloria Steinem talking, the bra burning protest, Betty Friedan, and then Phyllis Schlafly talking.
This is why I loved that show, Mrs. America. I like it was a very, very well.
This was like Mrs. America in 30 seconds.
Right.
Then they had, after that, it was Andrea Dworkin talking about the harmful effects of pornography on the left. You had Camille Paglia on the right talking about femininity and feminism and things like that. Just going on and boom, 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 and then right to the present and the Hobbes decision.
Dobbs
decision.
I don't know where Hobbes keeps coming.
I'm a Calvin and Hobbes fan. I think that's what I'm doing. But Sarah, I keep calling it Hobbes.
She just had her baby, by the way.
Who? David?
Sarah Isgur just had a baby. So she's been off the pods for a little while. It's been David Latt, who is this faggoty lawyer.
What is it, David? What is this, Kramer versus Kramer?
No, it's David and David, yes.
That's fucking...
David French and David Latt.
That's fucking stupid. Even Jonah Goldberg wouldn't show up for that. That's embarrassing. But it was basically talking about it in the context of, okay, well, would you be okay if the state banned abortion at 6 weeks? And, that was some of the things that were thrown out there as like, these very scary things. I will posit to you, Ann Coulter, who's no Trump fan, said on Twitter that DeSantis' decision to ban abortion at 15 weeks with the signing the Florida bill, she said that's his Dukakis in a tank moment. That's going to tank his whole primary candidacy. Because any candidate who wants to ban abortion at 15 weeks will lose a general election. Just bar none. You've got all Democrats and half of Republicans who will vote no. So that's a very interesting kind of... Let's talk about setting precedent. Like, what do you do with something like that? Like, do you sign a bill like that? Is it a heartbeat bill? Is it a Plan B bill? Where do you go?
I don't want to get into I don't want to get into the discussion of all of that because I'm just
because that was the thing that was said was, okay, great. Because of that decision, you lose, and now a candidate who believes in abortion until kindergarten is going to win. And then you get all of your gains lost, plus many losses many more kids
This is
killed.
the problem. Where is the line? Where is the line between, 15 weeks and the day of birth? Like,
right. No one's drawn that, by the way. No one is comfortable
there's
drawing
not
that
much room in between those two goalposts.
Right.
So I don't understand why that would be I'm not even taking up for DeSantis because I don't care for him.
But then where's your line?
Why does that become a killer?
Well, literally. But the other thing too, I think, just from a pragmatic standpoint, is we have so many important problems. Not saying this is unimportant. I'm just saying, in the amount of attention that's given to it compared to there is a homeless meth addict on the corner that's waving a machete around. There are kids doing fentanyl in school and dropping out. There are,
they're 1,000 weeks old, right?
Exactly. Born a few of them, but there are real ass problems happening. People getting fired from factory jobs they've had their entire life. Like there's real shit going on in our society. How much more air are we going to devote to this? Especially now that the decision is done.
Especially because all of the polls leading up to 2022 said that that one issue was not a big deal for most voters.
Right, out of the top 30 issues, that was the bottom.
Yet somehow
like
it still keeps coming up, and it still keeps tanking people's
It's a very
careers.
it's a very easy cudgel to use, because it's saying, remember, on the left, this decision is understood as a women's right to choose a health care decision. I'm just not saying that's correct. I'm just saying that's how it's framed. If you're a woman going in to vote, and you have a candidate that you think is impinging on your right to choose a healthcare decision, why wouldn't you vote against them? That's just how they framed it. That's the problem. They lost the PR battle on this. And the only way that they won back, that the anti-abortion group won back, was by saying we're pro-life. We're pro not killing babies. That's how far they had to go to basically make it salient to not, use fetal tissue in a Jamba Juice. But I don't know. It's a very odd issue, but it does get back to, like you said, talking about what did you say, consequentialism?
Yeah.
So the consequences of a decision being taken into account of the decision, whether or not those are true or not. That's the other thing too. You can't predict what the fuck is going to happen.
The letter of the law and the letter of the Constitution says that a woman does not have the right to kill a fetus. Basically, like that's what the Supreme Court has now decided with the Dobbs decision. Like
right.
That was bad. That was a bad decision made by a previous instantiation of the court.
Right.
And we've rectified it. That's what was made. And I guess my point is, way back then, when in '73, right, when it was made, Roe v. Wade, that in itself was a type of consequentialism, I think, because again, they weren't going by the letter of the law or the Constitution. They were going by how people would react and what they wanted.
Well, right, they might have gotten a decision they liked, but it was not a good decision. You can admit that.
It was not a decision of sound legal framework.
Right.
Like, that's the point. And so...
I mean, God, even Roe came out, and Jane Roe who
right.
had an egg here. I was like, I did not expect this would be the case that would be decided. Like,
so I guess my point is, Alito brought up this idea of...
A spicy Alito.
That's
what they say in your podcast.
Right.
A spicy Alito.
That was the first time, I think, on record that that kind of thought process was coming along and making these decisions, but it's becoming more frequent, according to Alito, and it's making him...
hang on for another 2 terms.
Well, it's making him a little dubious about the future of the court.
Right.
And where are we headed?
Well, this is a good question. And do you have any other topics I want to wrap this up?
No.
Do you think in 20 years' time there will still be 9 justices on the Supreme Court?
I hope so, but I'm not.
Do you think?
I would not bet money on it.
Okay. Because me too. Hashtag. I think that a Democratic Senate, a Democratic president, in 20 years would push it to 11 or 13. And then we get these more convoluted decisions as time goes on. I think that, like we talked about with these, old fucks hanging on to power in Congress, I think that there will be a lot of decisions made on behalf of the age of some of the people involved. And they'll say, okay, if this person, Clarence Thomas, age 80, is going to be age 90, age 95, age 98 on the court, whatever, we're going to get another justice. They might pull like an FDR or something like that and expand and pack the court. And that is worrisome. Because that is a nuclear option.
Right, but we've also discussed this, and the fact that the people who put on... The presidents who nominate Supreme Court justices now are nominating very, very green justices because they want their legacy to last, right? They want someone who's going to be on the court for 30 years. They don't want someone who's going to be there for 5-6 years who's actually a seasoned judge who's made just countless decisions on, a federal court.
See, now I have to look up what's the longest serving Supreme Court judge.
Because that was one of the... both Coney Barrett and Ketanji Brown Jackson, both of them, frankly, were too young and too green in their careers to have been nominated. And this is on both sides. They both did it.
Right. Okay. The longest serving Supreme Court justice. Chief Justice was John Marshall, one of the first Chief Justice, 1801.
I actually think I'm a descendant of his.
Really? 1801 to 1835. So you talk about basically the Constitution, end of the second president, way into the War of 1812, after the longest associate justice, even longer than that, William O. Douglas, 1939. So you want to talk about pre-World War II to 1975.
Wow.
That's a long fucking time. 13,358 days. So John Paul Stevens, who just stepped down from the Supreme Court, in fact, just passed away in 2019, was in the Supreme Court for just about as long, 1975. So John Paul Stevens came on when William O. Douglas, a month after he stepped down. John Paul Stevens retired in 2010. That's a long service. So you have 10 justices who have served for 32 years or longer. Clarence Thomas is at 31.
Right, but I even think he had more, when he was nominated, he had more experience as a judge before he was confirmed.
John Paul Stevens?
No, Clarence Thomas.
Yeah,
he'd been around the block for a while. He'd actually had some court cases. Ketanji Brown Jackson and Amy Coney Barrett, I think
had very thin experience.
Right, they had 4 notable cases to their name.
They're both nominated in their late 40s, early 50s. Because you're thinking that you're going to squeeze not just 35, maybe 40 years out of these people.
Right, exactly. And that made those hearings that much more like scraping the bottom of the barrel of, well, you once said this in an opinion 2 years ago, here's a footnote. You're really picking at straws here to try and tear this person apart. You don't have 20 years of actual experience that you're looking at.
And Oliver Wendell Holmes was 90 when he retired from the court. He served from 1902 to 1932. So you have people who, you have that precedent set for a 90-year-old in the Supreme Court. That means you might squeeze 10 more good years out of Clarence Thomas, which would make him the longest serving justice and the oldest.
But my point being, theoretically, Ketanji Brown Jackson could serve for another 40 years. That's ridiculous.
Because if all goes well, 40 years is 10 presidential administrations. Whether they're contiguous or not, whether they get reelected or not. Can you imagine that? 10 administrations. That's the Queen serving during Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill is her first prime minister, and Liz Truss is her last.
Which is why it was unprecedented and very, very... I honestly think that will be the legacy that Trump leaves, is the fact that he was able to nominate and confirm 3, right?
What if he gets 1 or 2? So say he wins again. He probably gets 2 more. He might nominate more Supreme Court justices since FDR. I think it's more than Nixon, right? Yeah. There's got to be 2 more waiting in the wings now. We'd be happy to take that job. Not the same ones as before. They're older now. They're 8-10 years older now. You could have. That's 8-10 years worth of it. Oh, what? You want to be in the Supreme Court? Ted Cruz is on that short list, for God's sake. Can you imagine that face on the Supreme Court?
Anyway. So this actually a good this was a good episode, or at least the second half, to springboard an idea. If you want to hear more legal and Supreme Court / justice system takes, let us know in the comments section.
Is legalese like Japanese? Or
sure.
Chinese?
I don't know what kind of question that is, but sure. No, the reason I say that is because I think it would be a fun additional thing to do.
I think so. Pay us.
So let us know.
Give us money.
But otherwise, go fuck yourselves.
Oh.